Ross County, Ohio, is a quiet community nestled amid rolling hills and quaint farmland, far removed from the bustling chaos of big cities. Yet, in 2005, this serene setting became the backdrop for a chilling story of betrayal, brutality, and escape that gripped the nation. At the center of the chaos was John Warren Parsons, a killer whose crimes and cunning evasion of law enforcement left a dark stain on the county's history. This is the full account of John Parsons, a man who began his descent into violence with a singular act of betrayal, transforming a tranquil community into the hunting ground of a desperate fugitive. John Warren Parsons was born in Ross County in 1971, into a family already struggling to make ends meet. From an early age, Parsons exhibited troubling behavior. Neighbors recalled him as a quiet but mischievous boy prone to violent outbursts and cruel pranks. His early life was marked by instability, frequent moves, brushes with juvenile authorities, and an inability to fit in at school. By his teenage years, Parsons had become well acquainted with the local police. Arrested multiple times for theft, vandalism, and petty crimes, he soon graduated to more serious offenses. His upbringing offered little guidance. His father was absent, and his mother worked multiple jobs to keep food on the table, leaving Parsons to fend for himself. His sense of isolation grew, fostering resentment and a dangerous disregard for authority. In the early 2000s, John Parsons fell deeper into the criminal underworld, engaging in drug deals, burglaries, and arms trafficking. His escalating behavior attracted the attention of law enforcement, but it wasn't until May 17, 2005, that his crimes reached a horrifying crescendo. On that spring day, Ross County Sheriff's Deputy Larry Cox was off duty, enjoying a rare evening with friends and family. Cox was a respected officer with a reputation for fairness and dedication. While running a simple errand, he crossed paths with John Parsons, who was attempting to steal a vehicle. The encounter quickly turned violent. Parsons, already wanted for several outstanding warrants, knew his freedom was at stake. What happened next was both calculated and brutal. As Deputy Cox confronted him, Parsons pulled a gun and fired. The single shot struck Cox, killing him almost instantly. The senseless murder of a beloved law enforcement officer sent shockwaves through the community. The murder of Deputy Cox triggered one of the largest manhunts in Ohio's history. Law enforcement agencies from across the state descended upon Ross County, determined to capture the man who had betrayed one of their own. For residents, the sight of helicopters circling overhead, roadblocks, and heavily armed officers patrolling their streets was both surreal and terrifying. Parsons, however, proved to be an elusive target. He had an intimate knowledge of the area's wooded terrain, honed from years of hunting and exploring. Using these skills, he vanished into the dense forests surrounding Ross County. Authorities combed the wilderness for weeks, but Parsons seemed to always be one step ahead. The fugitive's ability to evade capture only heightened the community's fear. Residents double-locked their doors, kept their children indoors, and reported any suspicious activity. Parsons' image, his piercing eyes, and hardened expression was plastered on wanted posters, news bulletins, and TV broadcasts. Parsons' time on the run was marked by a mixture of desperation and cunning. He relied on a network of criminal associates and sympathizers who provided him with food, money, and shelter. These individuals, either out of fear or loyalty, helped Parsons elude capture. He was rumored to have been spotted in abandoned barns, secluded cabins, and even moving along train tracks under the cover of night. Despite his fugitive status, Parsons was no stranger to violence during this period. Reports surfaced of him threatening those who refused to help or attempting to silence potential informants. His paranoia grew, leading him to distrust even those who once supported him. The longer he evaded capture, the more dangerous he became. For law enforcement, the search for Parsons became a personal mission. Deputy Cox's colleagues were relentless in their pursuit, driven by a desire for justice. Over time, the FBI joined the effort, adding Parsons to their 10 most wanted list and offering a substantial reward for information leading to his capture. Parsons' freedom came to a dramatic end nearly 3 months after Deputy Cox's murder. On August 21, 2005, acting on a tip, authorities surrounded a rundown home in Chillicothe, Ohio. Inside, Parsons had been hiding with a few accomplices who had grown weary of protecting him. As law enforcement closed in, Parsons attempted to flee through a back window but was met with heavily armed officers. Realizing there was no escape, he surrendered without a fight. The arrest brought a sense of relief to Ross County, though the emotional wounds left by his actions would take much longer to heal. The trial of John Parsons was as harrowing as the crime itself. Held in a courtroom packed with Deputy Cox's family, friends, and colleagues, the proceedings revealed chilling details of Parsons' actions and mindset. Prosecutors described him as a cold-blooded killer with no regard for human life, painting a portrait of a man whose life of crime had culminated in a senseless act of violence. Parsons, for his part, showed little remorse. His defense team attempted to argue that the shooting was unplanned, a panicked reaction to being caught. However, the evidence, ballistics, witness testimony, and Parsons' own behavior told a different story. The jury took less than a day to convict him of capital murder. During the sentencing phase, Deputy Cox's family gave heart-wrenching victim impact statements, describing the void left in their lives by his death. The judge handed down the ultimate penalty, death. Parsons was sent to death row, where he would await his execution. Parsons' time on death row was marked by a mix of defiance and reflection. While he initially maintained his innocence in media interviews, claiming he had been framed or misunderstood, he eventually admitted to the crime in a series of letters. These confessions, however, did little to garner sympathy. Inmates who encountered Parsons described him as manipulative and prone to outbursts of anger. He remained a divisive figure even among the prison population, with some fearing his violent tendencies and others dismissing him as a man consumed by his own failures. On April 15, 2009, John Warren Parsons was executed by lethal injection at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility. His execution marked the end of a chapter that had haunted Ross County for nearly 4 years. Outside the prison, a group of Deputy Cox's friends and colleagues gathered to honor his memory, holding signs that read, "Justice for Larry." Parsons' execution sparked debate about the death penalty in Ohio. Supporters argued that his crime warranted the ultimate punishment, while critics questioned whether his death truly brought closure to the community. For Deputy Cox's family, the execution was a necessary step toward healing, though the pain of their loss remained ever present. The story of John Warren Parsons is one of betrayal, brutality, and the long shadow of violence. His actions not only took the life of a respected officer, but also shattered the sense of security in Ross County. For the residents who lived through those harrowing months in 2005, the memory of Parsons' reign of terror serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of peace. Deputy Larry Cox is remembered as a hero, a man who gave his life in service to his community. His legacy lives on in scholarships established in his name, as well as in the memories of those who knew and loved him. For criminologists and psychologists, Parsons' case remains a chilling example of how a life marked by neglect, crime, and violence can culminate in tragedy. His story, though horrifying, underscores the importance of addressing the root causes of crime and ensuring that justice is swift and certain. The story of John Warren Parsons lingers as an unresolved scar for Ross County, a stark example of how one man's choices can wreak havoc on an entire community. The tragedy of Deputy Larry Cox, whose life was cut short in an act of senseless violence, remains the focal point of this grim tale. But as the years go by, the details of Parsons' crimes serve as a sobering lesson in vigilance, justice, and the enduring strength of those left behind. Criminal psychologists have since dissected Parsons' actions in an attempt to understand the mind of a man capable of such cold-blooded violence. What drove Parsons to escalate from petty crimes to the murder of a respected deputy? Was it desperation, a hardened heart from years of running, or simply a lack of moral compass? Experts suggest that Parsons exhibited classic signs of antisocial personality disorder and inability to empathize with others, a penchant for manipulation, and a deep-seated resentment of authority figures. His childhood of neglect and early brushes with the law likely reinforced a sense of alienation, making him feel justified in his criminal behavior. For Parsons, life was a series of adversarial encounters. Every interaction was a potential conflict, and every person he met, a potential threat or obstacle. The brutal murder of Deputy Cox, however, revealed another layer of Parsons' psyche. The deliberate nature of the killing, the calculated decision to pull the trigger rather than flee, speaks to a man who had abandoned all pretense of morality. In that moment, Parsons became not just a criminal but a predator, willing to destroy anyone who stood in his way. The community of Ross County was forever changed by the events of 2005. The murder of Deputy Cox, a man who had dedicated his life to protecting and serving his neighbors, was a blow that shook the county's sense of security. For weeks, the fear of Parsons lurking in the shadows gripped the townspeople. The tranquil streets of Chillicothe, once filled with the laughter of children and the hum of daily life, became eerily quiet as residents locked their doors and avoided venturing out after dark. Local law enforcement, too, felt the strain. For many officers, the hunt for Parsons was personal. Deputy Cox was not just a colleague but a friend, a mentor, and a symbol of the very ideals they had sworn to uphold. The manhunt tested their resolve, forcing them to confront their own fears and doubts as they pursued a dangerous fugitive through the dense forests and abandoned buildings of southern Ohio. In the years following Parsons' capture and execution, Ross County worked hard to rebuild its sense of normalcy. Memorials to Deputy Cox were erected, and his name became a rallying cry for justice and resilience. Community events and fundraisers in his honor helped to heal some of the emotional wounds, though the scars of that dark time remained visible to those who had lived through it. Though Parsons was executed in 2009, his name continues to evoke a mixture of fear and fascination. True crime enthusiasts and researchers have delved into his case, examining every detail of his life and crimes. Documentaries and books about the events of 2005 have kept the story alive, ensuring that the lessons learned from his actions are not forgotten. However, for many in Ross County, Parsons' name is best left in the past. The pain he caused, the lives he disrupted, and the fear he spread are reminders of the darkness that can exist even in the most peaceful of places. Deputy Cox's family, though they have worked to move forward, still carry the weight of their loss. For them, Parsons is not a figure of intrigue but a symbol of everything they have had to endure. The story of John Warren Parsons serves as a cautionary tale on multiple levels. It highlights the devastating consequences of unchecked criminal behavior, the importance of community vigilance, and the resilience of those who stand against violence. It also underscores the need for early intervention in the lives of troubled individuals. Perhaps, had Parsons received the guidance and support he so desperately needed as a young man, the tragic events of 2005 might never have occurred. For Deputy Larry Cox, his legacy is one of heroism and sacrifice. Though his life was tragically cut short, his memory lives on in the hearts of those who knew him and in the community he served. He is remembered not for the way he died but for the way he lived with integrity, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to justice. As the years pass, the story of Parsons and Cox will continue to be told, a dark chapter in the history of Ross County, but one that ultimately speaks to the enduring strength of a community united in the face of tragedy.